You can support the creation of these videos by supporting me at patreon.com/John D. Ruddy. I was there, man, when it all started. Following the hype, collecting all the merch, and getting Pokemon Blue for Christmas, and indeed, catching them all. I'm here to help you build your own Pokedex. What do I mean by that? We are going to draw every single Pokemon. Yes, there's over 1,000 of them now. We're going to do it. Not only will you learn to draw Pokemon, but you'll also learn loads of great skills for drawing cartoons and drawing people that you can bring into your own illustrations. You can start your collection with a ring binder and some Polly Pockets, or if you just want to draw, you'll need simple printer paper, a pencil, I prefer a HB or 2H because we're going to be rubbing these lines out later, an eraser, and some sort of pen or a fine tip liner, and indeed some colourful markers for the end product. Come along and join as we try to draw them all. Hi folks, so today we are going to be drawing the third ever starter Pokemon of the Kanto region, and that is Squirtle. Good old Squirtle. So first of all, we got the simple ones to do. So for our quick draw of Squirtle, we got our circle to start, and his little mouth, very much kind of like Bulbasaur's, with a little dimple in the middle. Although this one, he doesn't have fangs, so this is just the outline of his tongue inside his mouth. And he's got his 2 nostrils, and his eyes flat at the bottom, curved at the top, curved at the top. And give him wee. That. Work them in. Squirtle. Now, his 2 arms. Come here like this. So, 2 triangles like that. And a little point like that for his thumb. So, his body will be bigger than his head, because if you imagine as well, he's a little turtle, so he has to be able to fit inside there. And his feet, 1, 2, 3, very easy. You can imagine though, this foot kind of jumping down like that. Going across, line across the shoulder, like a V across there. V in the middle, V in the middle, cross, like that. We've got his shell. And then finally, his tail. So we can start with a little spiral coming out here, and loop in like that. And then his tail goes in like that. And there you go, there's Squirtle. Quick draw Squirtle. And then quick draw Wartortle. Wartortle, very similar, but again, he's got a little bit more detail. So his head has a little bit more shape to it. And also, he's got this weird ear. Well, in fact, he's got 2 weird ears. But he's got, oh, I don't know, can you hear that rain in the background? Possibly. Now, he has little fangs. And his eyes, flat at the bottom, but watch this. Now he's got little serious eyebrows. And his little pupils. Leave it white at the top, black at the bottom. And then his arms are similar, except his arms this time have little claws on them, little nails. So look at this, 1, 2, and then 3. And 1, 2, 3. And his body, very similar. It's actually simpler than Squirtle's pattern. Just a big cross. But it does have a little space up here that's all coloured in. Gives it a little bit more space. Some of his shell as well. Actually, no, I'll go back to that. There you go. And in fairness, if you want to do both of Squirtle's feet like that, that's fine. And his shell around the back like that. And then finally, now Wartortle has a really weird tail. In fairness, so does Squirtle, but Wartortle's is even weirder. So watch this. I'm going to start with a spiral, but it's going the other way. It's going in. And he's got another one up here. Spiral round and bring it down. Now it'll disappear behind the hand. Come out like that. And then we fill it in like that and put in a couple of lines. It's like this big weird furry tail. And there's your Wartortle. Quick draw Wartortle. And now finally, quick draw Blastoise. So, with Blastoise, we're going to start with his head. So, his head... It's almost like a frog's head. Except he has little cat's ears. Now his eyes are little triangles like this. The other one, you're only going to half see. You can give him some angry eyebrows. And his mouth is like that. At the bottom of his mouth, he's out because this bit's actually big yellow bit, but you can give us two of his little fangs hanging out. And then his nostrils is actually this weird kind of, it's like a flattened out W. Anyway, so for his, so we're going to do his belly first. Big belly. And then we're going to do his shell. So shell comes out here. We've got this weird kind of shape here. And then, watch this, for his hands. Actually circles on circles. Like that. And 1, 2, 3. And you can do some inside. Like that. Now, going across his belly, along the top, he has that space like Wartortle does. Then across the rest of his belly, there's little double stripes. And then his legs, so these kind of, these diamond shapes like that. Not even diamonds, but. And then down like that. And then 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Okay. And then finally, we got his, his cannons. So draw 2 ovals either side, and draw black oval inside. 2 straight lines down either side. Curve line, and then shape like that. And now in behind it, there's like a box, and same on the other side. And then it's like a box within a box, and you can color that box in black. Okay, and then you can add some more shapes for his shell, because he's got a big heavy duty shell. Then we tail out the back, and there's your simple Blastoise. Boom. Now for the fun part, the detailed ones. So let's see. So we have our template underneath first, so that we can trace that, get it in the right spot. I always loved that Squirtle was 007. Of course, a combination of Squirt and Turtle And some have suggested Squirtle, which would kind of explain the big weird tail that he has. So, to start off, we can start off with his head. Squirtle is a fairly simple character. I'm just going to move my Game Boy, actually. Yeah. He's a fairly simple character. But we just want to get that head just right. So it's like a squashed, it's not a perfect circle, it's a squashed circle. Perfect for using Skull Bash. And then his body is another big oval. Like that. If you want to, you can see where it goes, but we don't need that this time. Now, what we can do as well, because this guy is a turtle, if it helps, we can actually draw an oval here. So this is where one of his arms is going to be popping out. His other arm is going to be popping out there. And then his other is going to be popping out there. And his other is going to be popping out there. And actually we can add them now. So again, hands similar to Charmander. This is why we use the pencil. So 2 digits and a thumb. But from another angle, we can just do 1, 2, 3. And so his bottom leg is coming out here. So the pose that he's going to be in, is like he's kind of jumping up. So, and well, he's like bouncing from one foot to the other. So his other leg is going to be in a different pose. His other leg, so we've got his knee, so we've got the curve of his knee, and then his foot underneath. It's popping down, and we got 1, 2, 3, like that, more or less. And now, his tail. His tail pops out the back here, so it's bigger at the top. So what we could actually do, if you want to, you can do like a kind of a big circle like that, just to gauge it, and then have it get smaller down there. But indeed, it's not a circle at the end; it's actually a spiral, like that. Wait till we get to Wartortle's shell or tail. So speaking of shell. His shell just tucks in behind him here. We only see a little bit of his shell and a little bit of the pattern on his shell. But the main pattern that we see is on his chest. Now, quick way of doing this is, so this isn't straight down. See the way it goes from the center of where his head should be. And see there's a slight curve. That's because this whole body is round. And likewise, when I'm going across here, it's not straight across. There's a slight curve to it because it's because the whole body is round. And then along the top here, there's another line that cuts across here, and then from the bottom there's a diagonal line that comes up, and a diagonal line that comes up like that, and likewise. About halfway up the top of his leg, another diagonal line comes in there, and it comes in like that too, and likewise on the other side. But of course, because you can't see the exact top of his leg on the other side, so it's not going to be in the exact same spot. So we can rub out some lines on that pattern, because not all of those lines are part of the pattern. There we go. And we can rub out the inside of those arms there, so you can see clearly. There's our Squirtle. And now for his face. Now, just like the first 2 starters, I'm going to start with the mouth, because then it's easy to kind of place everything else. And just like the starters of all the others, he starts with a little smile, with a little dip, little dimple. Although Squirtle doesn't have any teeth. Because he's a turtle. Well, he's a Squirtle. As far as I know, turtles I don't think have teeth. They have like a beak. Don't quote me on that. Actually, go find out for me and let me know in the comments. I just don't know off the top of my head. I don't think they have teeth. And now his eyes are... So we'll start off with actually big tall ovals, but they're not actually going to be this shape, but this is just so we can find a nice place for them. Because if they were entirely ovals, this would look terrifying. But what we can do, the reason why we do this, it's just a wee bit easier to find that bottom line. Yeah, that's where I kind of want the eyes to start. Right there. So the bottom of his eyes are actually flat. The top are round. He's got little kind of eyebrows. Nice. I keep saying eyebrows. Technically, they're not eyebrows. And you know what? I'm just going to round up the top of his head a little bit more. Keep saying eyebrows. His eyes are very similar to Charmander's, where he's got that white reflection and that dark shape there. And again, like Charmander, this will make a lot more sense when we actually get to the coloring in of it all. There's like a little half moon. Okay. Oh, and one last thing. His little tongue. So now it's time for drawing the lines. So we can start down the bottom here. Drawing really nicely round shapes can be tricky. And even that's not perfectly round. But we will survive. And his wee nostrils. And his adorable little eyes. Yeah. As I said before, because we can see the whites of his eyes, it's fine. But if we couldn't see the whites of his eyes, it would look probably a bit creepy. Okay, so there's our little Squirtle. Little squirt. Squirtle. Wartortle. Blastoise. Oh dear. Oh, the memories. I actually recorded every single episode of like that first whole series. Basically all the Kanto Indigo League. I recorded on VHS. Except I missed the Bulbasaur episode when it came out. I was so angry. I was so annoyed. Because I was away. It was on Saturday morning, I think. I was like, no, why did they show that episode without me? And you couldn't just go look it up online. Actually, I tell you what. The Pokemon website was one of the few was one of like the first websites I ever looked up. Pokemon.com, you know, in the late 90s, in the very early days of the internet. Well, I mean, early days of the internet getting good. Yeah, Pokemon.com was where it was at. And like, there wasn't really a lot to do. There were a couple of games, but like you had to wait for about half an hour for the game to load up. And all the while you were using up the house phone line, so nobody could receive calls, which was stressful for some people, namely Mum. There we go. Okay, I'm drawing Squirtle and his evolutions, and I don't even have Pokemon Blue in the forefront. Cool, Aqua. That's quite fitting that it's Squirtle. Okay, so again, you know, we'll always, if we can, try and follow the flow of the color. You're gonna get sick of me chatting about that. It'll be like Bob Ross and his Happy Trees. But that being said, nobody ever got sick of Bob Ross talking about happy little trees. So. That was cool. It was funny actually. I was kind of ahead of the curve for a bit of it, like, you know, where I was like all in on Pokemon before everybody else, and because I was getting those magazines, and then all of a sudden everybody was talking about Pokemon, and I was like, my useless knowledge is no longer useless. But I always enjoyed the evolutions. Or what was mind-blowing actually with the second series of evolutions was how they created new evolutions for previous Pokemon. That was always pretty cool. Rossiana, I think you're finally up. Yeah. Yeah, it's a wee bit too brown, not enough. Wee bit too brown, not enough orange. But we can take a nice light orange, like pumpkin, and add to it. And give it a little orange pop. There we go. That's much better. Okay. So, his mouth. And like, this is the thing too, like once you start kind of drawing these and you see these patterns, you start to be able to, you know, you start absorbing them. You start kind of thinking, oh yeah, I see how that's done now. And you know what? For his eyes, yeah, that burnt umber would be nice. I see he's got nice brown eyes. Charizard has blue eyes. It's funny, so like Charizard has, and Charmander, you know, has blue eyes, which are generally kind of cold, and Squirtle has this kind of reddy brown eyes, which are warm. And I suppose with character design, it's a great way of, you know, bringing warmth to the character who is overall quite a cool color. Excellent. He looks very happy. And now, just to add, yeah, now you'll see me kind of using grey sometimes for adding the shade, and that can work. But when you're using grey to add shade like that, it can sometimes mute your base color. It stops your color from popping. Whereas if you use an actual shade or tone of the original color, you know, so like this is a blue ink as opposed to a gray, you know, it'll continue it being blue and strengthen the blue. And you know what? I'm having the same reaction as what I had with Charmander. I'm changing my mind. I think Cool Aqua is too too cool, and I think I'm gonna have to fire on a bit of Sky Blue. Here we go. There we go. That's stronger. This might have been slightly over dramatic, probably, but yeah, because you know you can darken something that's light, but trying to you can darken a light ink, but it's much more difficult then to undarken. So you have to commit. That's what I'm doing. For better and for worse. I know, I think this will even out nicely. It just makes them pop a little bit more too. Because like it's also, you know, with regards to character design, you don't want them to be too, you don't want them to look like an ice Pokemon, you know, you want them to look like a water Pokemon. I think just this deeper. Do you know the shade of blue is like should be probably halfway between what I had there, but it's fine. It's fine. I'll just go over this shade a little bit more. Yeah, I like this. It pops. You can see something going on there too. That can happen. And it's kind of the dangers of over coloring something. Is you see just the ink is just blotting a little bit, like it's just becoming a bit fuzzy. Now sometimes you can actually use that to great effect, and I don't mind it here, to be honest. But sometimes when you've got ink and it starts spilling into places you don't want it to, you know, it starts crawling across your page, you know, because while the inks are still wet, you're just gonna seep across. Do you know what? Okay, there we have our Squirtle. Squirtle! So, that's our Squirtle done. Squirtle D, Squirtle do. And now, let's get Wartortle on the go. And I assume it's just like war as in like, you know, warrior and war and all that. And then it's just like Turtle because it sounds better than Wartortle. Wartortle. Sounds a bit funny. Now, for Wartortle, is a similar build to Squirtle. Let's see, actually, I just want to make sure that I do, but you know, similar size. Yeah. Even though technically he is bigger. But yeah. He's a similar build. And likewise his legs, or his body. Like that. See the way, you know, I'm using those lines, you know, I'm finding where I want the bottom of it to be. So ultimately I'm settling on, there it is. Like these lines don't matter, but they help me get to where I needed to go. So his head isn't exactly this shape, you know, this is just to kind of get us starting here. But his head actually has one of those little kink to it. Like that. Maybe even round off his cranium a little bit. So, and likewise what we did with Squirtle, one of his arms is popping off here and popping out there. So now bottom of his feet, really easy, just like that. And likewise on the other side. And his arms actually are quite easy too. They just pop out. And you know what? This one actually pops out a little bit from the front too. His arms are kind of forward facing a little bit more, you know, because it's like technically if you imagine it, you know, he can walk on all fours if he wants to as well. His fingers then are literally just little triangles with one of the rounded sides. You know, some of these Pokemon hands are so handy to draw. Oh, handy, get it? Bad joke. But it just shows, you know, it just shows you as well. You know, there are easy ways because hands are tricky to draw, and we will get to them. I'm looking at you, Geodude and Machamp, Machoke, Machamp. A couple of hands floating around in the Pokemon universe. Okay, so there's the back of a shell, and the front of a shell is actually simpler than Squirtle's. A little bit. You got this diagonal coming up here, but then that line can be rubbed out, so I don't need to see that. Likewise there. Likewise there. Although he does have a little V-neck. You can actually see it a little bit underneath, so that's going to be black in there. And likewise here, there's this little kind of little divot. And in behind as well, we can see that little hollow behind his head. So, and indeed his tail. Do you know what? Yeah, we'll do his tail first. So his tail is a weird one. So if we want, we can actually do a few circles. So we'll do 1, 2 circles here. His tail is really weird. So from this one, you can draw that line down like that, and from this one you can bring your line down like that, and then in between there's just a little line, and then this circle can become a spiral, and likewise this circle can become a spiral. There's just a couple of lines. Like it's one that's always confused me. It's like I don't even know what it would feel like. It's like if you were to touch this, what would the texture be like? And that's always something I've not been sure about Wartortle's tail. Let's have a wee look actually out of curiosity. Oh yeah, we can look at Squirtle. Squirtle wasn't too bad, but again, you know, you can see the front pattern. You know, it's a little bit messy. It's not centered properly, you know. Again, this is where our guidelines come in first. Aha! So this is an interesting one. So you can see how like one eye is higher than the other. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, if that's the way you want to do it. But you know, if we want both eyes to, one eye to look, both eyes to look where they are on the head. If we want those two eyes, what this was just a big mistake on my part, and I didn't do the guidelines properly. So let's see if we can make a change. So again, we'll start off with the mouth, and again, his mouth has that little dimple. We should be getting good at drawing that little dimple mouth now. And that's good because that's a feature not just in these starter Pokemon, but it shows up in a few. So, for his eyes, what we're going to do is we're going to draw just two wee lines which will be underneath his eyes. And then we can do a curve up like this. A curve up like this. Now, that's not exactly what his eyes are going to look like because Wartortle always has a bit of attitude. So we can do a wee diagonal like that. But see, now we have this curve. That's what we want, you know. His pupil is smaller than what it was when he was Squirtle, although he still does that big adorable pupil, or the big adorable reflection. Okay, there we go. And then of course, big feature that we're missing at the moment is his ears. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to draw. So that's actually on the back of his head there. So this is just so I can see where the ears are attached, and so I can see that they're both attached at the same place on either side of the head. So from there, I can draw his signature. Yeah, like I feel like it's maybe like some kind of weird coral thing, or like some... do you know, it almost reminds me like of what they call a mermaid's purse, which is actually a shark egg. You know, like this whole feature, it's weird. Like there's all sorts of kind of wee kind of tendrils and stuff that kind of flow off it. I wonder if that's the inspiration. Let me know in the comments if you know, because I would love to know. There we go. That's Wartortle. Wartortle. And now we can do the lines. And there's eyes. So we don't do anything with that top line. That was just to help us get the rest of his eyes. And again, you don't even block off all that. And that line there, it's not even there either. You leave that open. A lot of anime eyes that do that don't actually use the full they don't use all of the line, and what it allows is, it means the eyes aren't as busy. And what I mean by that, like sometimes if you've got too many lines going all around your eyes and stuff, it can get it can just look cluttered, and your eyes are very important for your character to express itself. And if it's all covered in lines, now it depends on what it is. There we go. There's Wartortle. Yeah, he's keeping his mouth closed because he's all mean with attitude. Let's rub it out. And just be careful where you've done, if you have colored things in with your liner when you're rubbing it out, you know, because it might have taken a little bit longer to dry. You don't want it to smudge. And again, be careful when rubbing out these pages. Because you don't want a big old crease. Oh yeah, I forgot his nostrils. There we go. You know, I might even bring his nostrils down a little bit closer. Okay, so Wartortle's color is actually really interesting in that it is a weird kind of purpley blue. I'm trying to work out what the best color for him will be. But there's this beautiful color, Bluebell, which I think should be very nice. So this is beautiful kind of cross between blue and purple. That is 100% the color of Wartortle. I love it. It is a tricky shade, and that is the tricky thing about when you're working with markers, is the colors are very specific. So I mean, I have loads of these markers and they've all got loads of different colors, so I have loads of options. However, if you're just working off you know, off the shelf packet of kids markers, you mightn't have all of them. So there are other options. They can be coloring pencils, because coloring pencils, even though again, yeah, you got a set amount of colors, you can play about with those colors a little bit more, I find. It's funny because, as far as I know, and I only discovered this quite recently, was that Blastoise was the evolution of another set of turtle Pokemon that they ended up abandoning. They were like, no, we don't like these, but we do love Blastoise. That's pretty cool. And they ended up pairing him with a different group of so they ended up making him the evolution of Squirtle and Wartortle, which explains why, like, if you look at the way that Blastoise is built, he's not so much a progression of Wartortle, you know, like in some ways it's actually like a regression. Like Wartortle's ears are these big weird things, and whereas Blastoise's ears are just like kind of little cat's ears, you know, they're like Bulbasaur or Ivysaur, whereas and indeed his tail as well, you know, like it's just a simple little tail, and it just I even as a kid I always just thought that it felt a little Blastoise felt very different. Not very different, but more different. Say, you know, you can see the natural progression from Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard, and same with Ivysaur, well, Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, Venusaur. But with Blastoise, I don't know, there was just always something where it was like, Blastoise, there's like an extra step, you know, and an extra thing in its evolution. But anyway, it's fine. Do you know why? Because Blastoise is awesome. Can't get over how perfect that color is for Wartortle. That's so funny. And he has little cheeky cheeks. Yeah. Okay, we can add a little bit of shade onto the ears. I think cornflower will just be perfect for that. Yeah, a turtle with a big furry tail. But then again, the very thought of Pokemon, in fairness, the whole concept of Pokemon really does start to break down if you start poking too many holes in it. It's like Professor Oak. Okay, there's 150 Pokemon out there, and I need you to go and find them. It's like, well, how do you know that there's 150 of them if you haven't gone out and found them yet? And why are you sending a 10-year-old kid to do it? And to also capture them in the wild. And then make them fight others. Yeah, it's a strange universe. Must be a tricky thing, you know, like actually designing and coming up with all of these color schemes. You know, getting each one of these evolutions to look like they're part of the evolution, but also to look individual. You know, so it's like these simple things. They all require thought and design. Okay, now for a little bit of shading. Again, you know, our shadows really help to show the shape of these, the 3D shape, you know, so we can see that this arm is actually big and round because the shadow curves around it like that. And the head. Okay. And there you got Wartortle. And you know what? Let me just use my fine end of this just to give the fur a little bit more precision. Well, that works. I think I can actually afford to give his little cheek things a little darker edge to them. Yeah, I think that works better. That's what I love about Wartortle is, you know, it's this kind of balancing act of cute and mean. So there he is. Right, so there's Wartortle, and now on to Blastoise. There he is. Good old Blastoise, little Blastoise. Look at him, isn't he adorable? The real Blastoise is going to be a little bit more formidable. To trace our number so we get our right size. As in Blast and Tortoise. Some of the names are very clever and then some of the names are very obvious. Okay, so here we go. We're drawing Blastoise. Blastoise is big. Blastoise is mean. So to start off, we can start off with Blastoise's head. Blastoise's head is roughly actually quite circular, you know. Not ovular, but like it's pretty circular, or at least to start off with. And he's got a big body. Now, we probably will make that head bigger, but we're just making sure. Working out where the head was. But yeah, that body is big. Yeah, let's make that head now a little bit bigger. Not too big either. And so then on one side, we got, that can be kind of an oval. And on the other side, we also have that oval. And then on this side, we can put that there for now. And the other, you're not really going to see that one. It's actually on the far side. But that gives us our main size and shape. And his feet will come down there. And his head's up there. And yeah, and just to give us a little idea, we'll just draw these two rectangles here. That's where. And then we can draw two long rectangles here. That's where the water cannons are going to come from. Doesn't make any physical sense, but who cares? It works. And then we can just add a little extra bit of shell here along the back. And his little tail. And again, the tail wants to, not directly, but it, you know, kind of comes in line with the bottom of his torso a little bit too. So we can start with the legs, just to get them nice and grounded. So the legs are big. He's got big legs. In fact, they're going to be bigger than these wee marks here, but those marks are just to get us started. Yeah, they can be nice and thick, like that, and flat at the bottom. Same on this side. Yeah, we'll bring that down a little bit further. And boom, flat and thick. And you know what? Given that that tail is actually going to be hidden, let's make that tail come out a little bit further. So that's fine. Yeah, so I'll just rub that out now, just so you see a little bit clearer. And then on top of that, I'll just polish up the edges of the bottom, because this one's actually at a bit of an angle. So this one you're seeing side on, so that's why it's kind of nice and flat. Whereas this one you kind of see from an angle. So at the back of it there, you can do one of his toes. At the back of the other one, you can just toe like that. And actually, they can be fairly lined up with the line of the foot, you know, because they're flat to the ground. And then over here, we can draw from the middle one big toe like that. Again, it's a triangle, but the side on the foot is rounded, and then right beside that we could do another one, and again same idea. And once I actually have that, I can tidy it up, get the size of it right. I actually think that's a little bit too long, but that's, again, this is why we do our pencil drawings first. And now over on this side's a little bit easier to do. We'll start with the middle one, and I'll tell you why. Because, you know, if we imagine, so the center of the leg is here, so we'll get then the center toe here in the middle, and then we can do the other toes either side of it. And placing that one nicely in the middle helps, rather than starting on this one and then going 2 and then 3, and it just kind of looks a little bit off. Sometimes starting with the middle one, if there's 3 toes, you know, because odd numbers have 1 in the middle, you know, even if it's like 1,000,001, there's 1 number right in the middle of it, you know. So you got 1, 2, 3, so that 2 is in the middle, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that 3 is right in the middle, if that makes sense. Maths! You're getting maths today as well. So let's see. He's got these big old kind of knee pad features on his leg too, and they're actually bigger than the leg that we've drawn. These big natural knee pads, and same on the other side, so it's actually bigger and bulkier than the leg that we've drawn. Blastoise is big. Blastoise is bulky. It's probably the real kind of heavily armored one out of the 3. I mean, Venusaur is pretty big in top 2, but I mean, Blastoise is literally built like a tank. He literally has cannons on top. He is built like a tank. So around these, so his arms are quite interesting. So his arms have 1, 2, 3 circles like that, and same on this side. So we can just well the first one's actually an oval. You know, it's a little, the shoulder piece is a little bit bigger, but then it's a circle, and then a slightly smaller circle, and that's his hands. And we can rub that bit out, rub that bit out, and rub that bit out, just to make a little bit more sense of it. Sometimes when there's too many lines, it can start to look very confusing, especially when you're not sure what's going on. So we're going to do his finger, his other finger, again, just triangles at slightly different angles. Look at that. And then over here, so the middle one is kind of bigger and thicker than the other 2. But again, luckily for us, the starter Pokemon's hands are really easy. And a lot of Pokemon's hands actually are very easy in comparison. But again, Geodude, we're coming for you. We're coming for you. So part of his shell actually makes a little kind of lip going around his arm like that. But of course, gets hidden behind his arm. And same on this side. There is a slight angle to it, but if you just want to do it straight round, that's no bother. Okay. But yeah, Blastoise is so cool. I'm drawing Blastoise in ages. Now that I have a lot of the placement, I can do the top of his belly. The real turtle belly. Now his head. Right, what way will I start with the head? So we had this circle first, just to get us kind of started. Now we're going to kind of get that shape a little bit better. I'm wondering what the best. Do you know what? Let's fire some ears on him to get us started. So there's one ear, and the other ear can be over here. And snout will come out here like this. And look at this. Here we go. Classic. Except there's no dimple in the middle of this one. He's straight across. And he's got his tooth there. And his tooth there. Then his nose is quite interesting. His nose actually, his nostrils is just one line. It's this weird kind of dippy. It's almost like it's like a W that's been like stretched out. But you don't see the whole thing because part of it disappears behind the back of his, on the other side of his nose. There's a siren somewhere. And his eyes are triangles. And it's got his pupils in there. And the other eye you can barely see. The other eye is just kind of, you just about see it tucked in here. And you just draw little bits. That's the little white of his eye there, or the reflection. It'll be easier to do once we're actually doing the something. The lines, the black lines, pen lines. So the bottom of his mouth, so his mouth's open, and there's kind of a nice kind of 3D effect here. So we're seeing this is his bottom jaw open, his bottom lip opened up, but we actually see into the top of the mouth there too. So that comes in, so we can imagine that whole thing. And his tongue is wonderfully easy. It's just this big round thing. I think that's another clever bit of design about Blastoise, is that he's both big and scary, but also he is still kind of cute, you know, in the way of, you know, the whole idea with Pokemon is you make friends with your Pokemon, and so they're like, well, we still want this to look like a kid couldn't have a friend out of it. So, and Blastoise is kind of big and nice like that too. So it's very clever design. So we can continue the back of his, just along the side of his belly. You can see a little bit of his shell hiding in there. And then on this side, we see a little bit of a shell coming in a little bit diagonally. Just on the back, like that. Okay, we're going to do one of his cannons up here. So the top of the cannon, and do like an oval like this, and then a smaller oval inside, and then underneath we do another oval like this, except do that a little bit lighter, because so we're drawing a cylinder. We can actually do that same thing over on the other side. And then, even though we're not going to see this inside line here, it just helps us get the right kind of angle along the bottom of it. and then the bottom of the cannon. No, actually, maybe this could be a little bit longer. Yeah. Make that cannon a little bit longer. And then the bottom of it is like this. Coming out of his shoulders. Like all turtles have these naturally occurring water cannons in their shoulders. And then we got these little lines here just going to show the curve on the side of that. And then behind, we've got a box. Like that. And then on this side, we got a box. And we double that like that. And so we can add another little line coming up here. It gives a little bit of a 3D effect. And same on the other side. It kind of comes out, curves a little bit into the shell. And then finally, well, nearly finally, the shell has the different pieces like that. And then one last little detail. So along the top here, we double up this line at the top of his belly piece, and then across the middle, across his chest, arm to arm, we've got a double line. And then across the middle of his belly. And again, see this line, it's not straight across. There's like a slight little kind of bulgy bend to it. And again, that's to show the roundness of his body. So you're following that, you know, roundness. Okay. There's Blastoise. He is looking pretty mean. And now we're going to add the lines to it all. So and again, try to move your whole arm rather than sometimes you can be really tempted to, you know, draw like this, and you will see me drawing like this, but for some of your big lines it actually really helps to move your whole arm, you know, because then you can get a nice flow to it. And it takes practice to get steady with that, but you can get there. Note his hand. Now again, as I said, what I try to do what's out in front first. So those two big nails, they were out in front first, and then the hand, and then the next toe or claw, nail, whatever you want to call it, and then the next arm, and then the next arm. I love how his arms are like just big old circles. Like, it's very simple in a very good way. A lot of great cartoon design is like that, you know, just using simple shapes. Because I mean, in fairness, when it comes to animation, you know, the artist is having to draw it over and over and over again, so you kind of don't want something too complicated. There we have Blastoise. The line drawing. And we can rub this out. Again, being very careful. We don't scrunch the page. Now, if I was very clever, I could have gotten these lines a little bit more evenly spaced. But it's fine. We'll survive. We'll survive. Right. Now, for a bit of colour. Firstly, though, we can do a little bit of, I think we can do some highlights on him. And for the highlights, we can surely use pastel blue. I think. So yeah. No. And then the shadow as well. Goes right across. Yeah, so like his eyes are very similar to Charizard. It's, you know, like Charmander and Squirtle have a lot in common design-wise, and like their entire evolutionary pattern has a lot in common. Okay, so that works. I'll give him a bit of burnt orange in his eyes. Okay, and rose pink in the mouth. It's funny where it's like, you know, what color is Blastoise? And like the main color that people go for would obviously be blue. And yet, you know, when you look at him, like blue isn't the most dominant color, except like, you know, if you look at, it says probably partially why they use this design, because the yellow doesn't take up as much, whereas like this is going to be like a big space of yellow. So these we can layer on a little bit. Pastel blues. Yeah, so I'm just giving this slight little bit of tea green to this. Just gives it a little edge of green and puts it apart from the other bodies. Yeah, that looks about right. So whatever you use to shade as well really defines what kind of color that light. Because I was looking at that yellow, that primrose that I used, and I was like, is that like a little bit too yellow? But when you put on the shade, it shows you. And now the final bit is all these black spots. Okay. And then we have Blastoise, finally. So, let's see them all together. Here is Squirtle. They're pretty good. They look nice together. Yeah. Nice. So, next thing to do, let's get them in our folder. Right next to Charizard. Right, no, that's Wartortle. Here we go. Squirtle, 007. Da, 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 da. And Wartortle. And Blastoise. Sweet. So now we've got loads done. And indeed, we can take off our front. Squirtle, Wartortle, Blastoise. All done. Sweet. Squirtle, Wartortle, Blastoise. So, there you have it, folks. Thanks for watching, folks, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as the next video pops up. The next video, indeed, is going to be Pikachu, and indeed Pichu and Raichu. So that's going to be fun. The most iconic Pokemon ever. It was inevitable. I figured I'd do it kind of sooner rather than later. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at patreon.com/John D. Ruddy. These are basically free art lessons, so if you wish to support me, please do. Hugely appreciated. I really want to see the pictures that you've drawn, so if you have drawn any of the pictures either from this or just some Pokemon pictures in general, I want to see them. And I might just start sharing some of them up here and giving some people shoutouts, so please send them on. You can do so at, say, Instagram. You can send them either via DM or tag me in them, and at John D. Ruddy, and I should see them. But yeah, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this, and can't wait to draw with you again soon.